to talk about the commands. Some of your favorite cards of all time, I believe, are commands.
I think that is very true. I think commands are one of the coolest things, probably one of the coolest things that Wizards has ever introduced. I think that the idea that you have a reasonably costed thing at instant speed that gets to do two things. When you think about the variables in Magic and all the ones you're trying to contend with at one time when you play a game. And usually, if you go 1-for-1 with a card, that's fine. Or if you kind of go wider, like a Wrath or something that, affects all players, that's. But when you have modal cards that allow you to do two things, charms are already fun. Right? Charms are already fun, but they always feel like you're paying a little too much for what you're getting, which makes sense because you have their modal. But commands, they actually feel like, because of the two color thing and because that's just what they want them to do, at their best, they're absolutely worth the mana and they're better. Like they can swing a game. How many games have you seen Cryptic Command swing? I mean, that's like one of the swingiest cards in the history of Magic, right?
It unswings, right? It prevents them from swinging.
Yes. But like that card, and then not every command is good. Obviously, there's quite a few bad ones. What do you think are the worst three commands? So barring these guys, we'll get to these in a minute.
Blue black is probably
that's probably the worst.
The worst because of the original 5. All 5 of them have seen decent play somewhere, with the red one probably being the worst, but even that one seeing play. Of the second run, the red green one is the best one. Oh no, sorry, the black red one's the best one. Call Against Command is the best one. Then the red green one
for sure.
Green white was the very good in standard, but never seen play in modern. +1/+1 counter, fight, and something else.
Stack an enchantment, prevent all damage. Yep.
Blue white was almost there, but was just over the edge of being good. And I think it was them both of the blue ones were them being afraid of Cryptic Command, which I think they thought was too good. And then the blue black one I think is just the worst. 5 mana to kill some creatures sometimes and draw a card.
I'm a big fan of Ojutai's Command. I've played a lot of that card. I think it's a little underpowered. I've found many times that to be just a little underpowered, but I've always liked it. I've always wanted to make it good. I think what that card needed was to, instead of gain 4, it needed to be gain 2. You needed to reduce the effect and make it cost 3, basically, is what that card needed to be.
Or it should just been reanimate and cost 4. I think the reanimated ability should have been less limited and cost 5. But just cost the same amount of mana, but no limitation there.
That's fair. Yeah.
It's the one that's on the edge, and there's a bunch. The thing with commands is there's so many knobs that anything could change. I think going down to 3 makes it too good, but yeah, it definitely is the one that had the closest. I think the blue black one was just by far the farthest from being played and never saw play in any format. Even the red, the fact that the red one did see play and has some powerful effects. Yeah, I think it's the blue black one. I think even if you add these, blue black is still. I think these are all better than blue white and blue black. I don't think any of them are as good as Call Against Command.
Yeah, I mean, Call Against Command is pretty clearly the best.
Well, it's Cryptic Command, Call Against Command.
Probably after that, it's
Austere Command if you include Commander.
Yeah, okay, that's
only,
fine. If you include Command.
Yeah, in Modern only.
It's red-green, probably.
I think red-green's 3rd.
It's also funny, too, because the unofficial 11th command is Collective Brutality. And...
Well, that mechanic is its own thing, right? The escalate, right? Escalate. There's a bunch of different escalate cards that are good.
Yeah, I mean, they're all fine, but that card's amazing, and the rest of them are above average cycle cards from a set.
Speaking of another good card that's good with our preview card, by the way.
Yeah, I mean that card is like.
Well, you can turn 4, play that, and then cast Lingering Souls after discarding it for the second effect to get 2 triggers on the Leonin. That's dope.
If you included Collective Brutality in the run of the 10 commands, if it was the 11th command, where would it fall for you?
3.
Cryptic, Colligons, Collective?
Yeah. I think good,
right?
I think it's better than red green. It's definitely better than the black one. It's better than the red one. It's better than the green one. I think green, by the way, is in the top 5. If I were to round out the top 5, I think it's the green one or Austere Command, and it's format dependent. Green has seen modern play, though very limited. Yeah. Austere Command is a tier 1, like a tier. It's not an S tier, but it's an A tier commander staple. I think Austere Command has probably seen the 4th most play of any command after Cryptic Command, Call Against Command, maybe even the 3rd. Yeah, I think that's the top end. Now, let's talk about these new ones. We're going to start with your currently cosplaying as the Silver Quill Command. 2 white, black, sorcery, choose 2. Target creature gets +3/+3 and gains flying until end of turn. Return target creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Target player draws a card and loses 1 life. Target opponent sacrifices a creature.
So the first question is let's get the elephant out of the room here. Sorcery. How does that make you feel?
unhappy about it. I think this is on the low end for me of these 5, sadly. It does a lot of cool things I like, and they scale better than some of the bad commands before did. Like, this is a card I would play in Commander, right? Like, it just, everything is generically good, and you're going to be able to get the value you need out of it, which makes it better than the blue-white one, which, like, I've ended up cutting from things. Because sorcery is allowed to do stuff when you need it to, versus, like, I'm going to counter a spell. But all of the other things about it are pretty medium.
So, right, if you compare it to blue-white, effectively what you're getting is it has an identical ability in the return target creature card. That's literally an identical, right? It's a 1-to-1 ability on a 4-mana white command. Draw a card and lose a life is, you can point a point of damage at your opponent, I guess, but you're not going to. You're going to draw a card, which means it's another basically identical ability. The 1 life is kind of negligible, right? So 2 of the abilities are almost exactly the same. Now, you can counter a creature spell.
I will kill a person one day in my life with that 1 life. They'll be at 19 and I'll murder someone.
Target opponent sacrifice a creature is not so different from counter target creature spell, right? It's in fact, creature spell is probably a little better in a lot of ways.
I'd say it's significantly worse. Like, especially on turn 4, right? Like, an Edict in Modern isn't really playable unless it comes with a value engine like Liliana the Veil, or at best at 2 mana, and even those haven't seen play. Like Liliana's Victory or whatever never saw play. So I'm pretty skeptical on target opponent sacrifices a creature on its own. Yeah. And then jumping a creature.
+3/+3. Yeah. +3/+3 and flying is interesting. That one, that's a powerful thing you can do. Because basically the +3/+3 and flying with the loses 1 life is essentially a 4 life swing, if that's what you want to use it for, which is the inverse of, again, the blue-white one where you gain 4 life. So it kind of has a lot of the same DNA as the blue-white one. It's just a sorcery, which I think makes it a lot worse.
And my question is if that's the, like, I would play Elspeth Knight Errant over this card 1000% of the time.
Yeah, I would agree.
And Ben, this is you saying this knowing that this is a card that lets you cast Mirror Superior.
I mean, if you want to give me more copies of Mirror Superior, if I can get a functional reprint of that card, then we're in business and I can build all of my decks. But the problem is I still only have 4 Mirror Superiors and I can't play more of them, but they keep making cards that make Superior sweet.
So let's talk about Witherbloom Command, which I think is on the top end. I think this is one of the ones I think is on the chance of being the best one. This and the blue-red one, at least in Modern. Choose 2. It's a sorcery, green-black. Target player mills 3 cards, then you return a land card from your graveyard to your hand. Destroy target non-creature, non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. Target creature gets -3/-1 until end of turn. Target opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life.
So this is pretty clearly the best one to me because it costs 2.
It's kind of not the only one that costs 2.
Yeah, but like, first of all, mill 3, return a land card to graveyard to your hand. I know you read that ability and you're like, oh, like that's like your speed, right?
In Modern, this is a guaranteed draw a land card, right? Because fetch lands exist, you're going to get a land card into your hand, and like if you can't get the land card into your hand, you'll mill 3 to get a land card into your hand. Then add all the layers of like, this is good with cycle lands, and this is good with Ghost Quarters and Field of Ruins and or whatever. Especially stuff like Raging Ravines. Like this, getting a Raging Ravine is really good. So that on its own is really good. Not to mention when you mill 3 cards, you make your Tarmogoyf bigger, or you mill yourself into value cards you want in your graveyard, like said Lingering Souls if you're playing Abzan. Yes, I'm all about that ability.
Do you know where else I think this card is actually going to be good, surprisingly? I think this card's going to see play in like land-driven commander decks.
Oh,
and
yeah,
I can tell you exactly why, right? Because I think you're gonna obviously draw a land. You want to hit your land drops in commander, but also destroy target non-creature non-land permanent. That's like blow up a Soul Ring, blow up a Mana Crypt, blow up a rock of any kind.
Like I'm snap putting this into my Highlander deck, my graveyard one, because like that deck needs interaction that puts cards into my graveyard, and this is a interactive card that puts cards into my graveyard. I think this is a dredge staple, to be honest. Like in modern dredge decks, at least in the sideboard, if not in the main deck, having the ability to always like mill 3, make sure I keep hitting my land drops, which that deck always has a problem with because you stop drawing cards eventually because you're dredging. Hopefully get dredgers into my graveyard. And this kills 90% of played graveyard hate in Modern. It kills your Graph Digger's cages. It kills like everything but Skoos. I guess it doesn't kill Scavenging Ooze, which Dredge doesn't care as much about because it's slower than they are.
Yeah, no, I just think this is the best one. I mean, this card is like, you want to talk about the one I'm the most sad is not an instant. This one being a sorcery is fine because you can also leave mana open for other spells, but like I just wish this was an instant super hard,
And its worst case scenario is mill 3 of your own cards and target opponent loses. You gain 2 life and they lose 2 life, right? Like almost always it'll draw you a card because it'll be in Modern, especially it'll almost always draw you a card and drain your opponent at its worst case scenario. And most of the time it's going to do that and destroy one of their permanents or do that and kill a creature. Like, I think this card's great. Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I like it. Especially when you start thinking of like decks that want to kill. The fact that it's like main deckable sideboard hate against graveyard cards is like really good. All right, next card. And this is I think the other possible option for best one. I think this is second best. Prismari Command. 1 blue red. Instant.
Yeah.
It does cost 3 mana. Prismari Command deals 2 damage to any target. That's part of Call Against Command. Target player draws 2 cards, then discards 2 cards.
Oh!
That's part of Izzet Charm. Target player creates a treasure token, making this ostensibly a 2 mana card, and then destroy target artifact, the other ability on Call Against Command. So,
yes,
if you count drawing 2 cards and discarding 2 cards as drawing a card, or even returning a card from your graveyard to your hand, this is very similar to Call Against Command, right? It feels Call Against Commandy to me. What's cool about this card is if Call Against Command and Izzet Charm had a child, because sometimes it's a 2 mana, draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. Sometimes it's a 2 mana, do 2 damage to any target, which is its worst mode. Sometimes it's destroy target artifact for 2 mana. But that 2 mana is kind of a ramp spell. You can on turn 3 go to 6 mana, on turn 4, right? End of turn 3, you go to 5 mana on turn 4. So that's like not irrelevant. It does ramp you a little bit, or just discount the card itself.
Yeah, I mean, again, you want to talk about these cards being designed for more than one format. While I'm looking forward to playing this card in 1v1 formats, I also think this card's good in Commander.
Well, that's
destroy
true.
an artifact and ramp.
Like that's
destroy
true.
An artifact and ramp.
Yeah. I think charms in general have that, right? Like charms are a much more commander friendly space. We kind of talked about this with Glenn, right? Where the design of best for one mechanics. So if you guys didn't, I highly recommend. It's one of the best episodes we've done this year. We interviewed design architect for Wizards of the Coast, Glenn Jones, who was originally hosted this podcast for a 300th episode anniversary. And we talked about a lot of how like them designing for best of one on Arena, which has become one of the most played formats of Magic, has benefited formats like Modern and Commander because you have cards like commands that are good in more versatile situations, but have better fail case scenarios because you have to be able to main deck them. In Modern, it's helpful because, as Paul Vito Dama de Rosa would always say, is like, I wish Modern had 20 card sideboards. There's too many different ships passing in the night that I can't have sideboards for all those problems. The more main deckable cards that have corner case use cases, the better that format becomes for value-oriented decks to be good at it. And in Commander, you only get 1 game. And so charms are good for both of those. That's when I think that all of these have some value of consideration. Obviously, the more expensive they are, the worse they are. And Prismari Command has that, like it can 2 damage to any target, which is really 4 modes, right? It's burn target opponent, destroy a planeswalker, destroy a creature. Other charm effects have only one of those options available to them. And this has all 3 in that one word.
Think about for a second that they continue to print Shock, and it continues to see standard competitive play year after year after year in formats like Standard, in formats like Historic. I just think it's continued to be good for a very, very long time. Shock has been a versatile card that is used in many formats. And if you're giving me that, like Fire Ice, that's another card. I guess it's divided though, so it's a little different. But I think the Shock component of this is quite valuable.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing is its similarity, both K Command and Izzet Charm, and the fact that like there are many times where Izzet Charm, if Izzet Charm was do 2 damage to target creature and draw 2 cards to discard a card, I would have been very, very happy. And the fact that this gives me that ability is dope. All right, the next one, I think this is maybe my choice for most underrated, is Lorehold Command. This is 3 red-white, so 5 mana, instant. Choose 2, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain indestructible and haste until end of turn. Lorehold Command deals 3 damage to any target. Target player gains 3 life. And sacrifice a permanent, then draw 2 cards.
This card's pretty dope.
It does a lot of things.
Really expensive. It's really expensive. Yeah, but it's an instant. And so first of all, sack a permanent, draw 2 cards is a dope ability. Like just like the fact that exists on this card, that you're going to play this as like a catch-up card in a scenario. Right. You'll sack a land the turn you cast this to draw 2. That on top of that, you can like Lightning Helix, draw 2, or you can. I don't think the +1/+0 indestructible haste one. Maybe. I mean, maybe sometimes that doesn't feel like where this card's going to do its work.
Remember, the most important piece of that is +1/+0 is like there are going to be times where that card wins you the game. In the pre-mentioned red, white, black version of this deck, there's going to be a moment where I have a bunch of Lingering Souls tokens and Young Pyromancer tokens, and I'm going to cast this and win the game. More importantly, that counters every board wipe ever printed.
So there's elements of a bunch of cards on here, right? You've got Lightning Helix and the 3 damage gain 3. Indestructible is a Boros Charm effect. So they kind of fold that into this.
Yeah, it has like 8 abilities.
Yeah. +1/+0 and haste. That's not part of a command or a charm that I can necessarily think of. And a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. I don't remember being on any charms or commands.
So one of the things this card does is for 5 mana, you get a 4/3 indestructible haste creature token, right? Creature. Like it is a 5 mana 4/3 indestructible haste creature that then becomes a 3/2 on your next turn. It also has the ability for 5 mana instant speed at the end of your opponent's turn to just draw 2 cards because you can sacrifice the token. It makes the token first and then you can sacrifice it. It also has the ability to create a flash 3/2 that then does 3 damage to target creature and you gain 3 life. Like all of the, if you take all of the different combinations, almost all of them are insane cards, but because it's 5 mana and because it's a white-red card, I think people are a little off of it, and it's expensive. It is expensive. Like for modern play, it's going to be weird, but I can't. I would play all of these cards. I would play a 3/2 that comes into play and does 3 damage and gains me 3 life. That, like a Flame Tongue Kavu, instant speed Flame Tongue Kavu for 5 mana is like a playable card. Yeah, I don't know. A 3/2 that then I sacrifice a land to draw 2 cards is like, especially in a red-white, a color combo that doesn't get card draw is also an insane value play. Yeah, I don't know.
That's why I responded to that first ability that I read so hard, sacrifice a permanent draw 2, because that doesn't feel like something red or white really ever gets. Like there are certainly like red cards where it's sacrifice something or discard something to get value, but very rarely. It's not a common effect. So the idea that you're going to be able to like, yeah, end of turn, let me put 3 more power on the table and draw 2. If you're playing a deck that has more than one of these in it, you might draw one of these, and then like there's a lot of stuff you can do. I think this, for raw power, this is probably my favorite of the commands. I think it brings the most stuff to it that I'm the most excited about. I'd be more stoked to cast this card than to cast the green black one, even though the green black one's better.
It has more Cryptic Command vibes than I've gotten from pretty much any command since Cryptic Command. The fact that it's instant speed, the fact that I can stop your opponent, like can counter your opponent's removal spells, the fact that I can get a creature at the end of, like I can play at the end of their turn to gain an advantage above what they had, the fact that I can remove one of their creatures and block with like one of mine. Like there's so many little things that this card does that are so powerful and different that it feels really, really cool in a way that commands don't normally feel, right? Like I don't feel like, if this is another card that I would love to get like the full body, because for those who don't know, they printed a Cryptic Command that was textless. It was one of the textless promos they did. And it's a joke because Cryptic Command often just reads, do whatever you want. Like, it's just like a bunch of abilities that basically it's like, yes, you get to win. And like making it textless actually does allow you to kind of say it does whatever I feel like it. You have to believe me that I tell you the rules on this card. Lorehold Command has that vibe to me. It just like does a lot. It has like the fact that its second ability is 7 abilities. It's like indestructible haste and +1/+0 to your whole team. Is a lot.
Well, it's also I think where the point you make with this that feels the most Cryptic Commandy, you know how when you're digging in a game and you're like that feeling you get when you draw a Cryptic Command, where you're like, this could turn the game around for me. If I play it right, this might turn the game around for me. That's what this card feels like. I can imagine drawing this card and being like, okay, how could I not at least have a shot to get back in this thing if I can do all this stuff?
Well,
That's what this card feels.
It has the like, I have my blockers up, they attack into me thinking they have good attacks. I cast this, making all my creatures indestructible, and then draw 2 cards, killing half of their creatures and sacrificing a land. Of those 2 cards I drew, I probably drew a land, and then maybe I drew another one of these cards. Like Cryptic Command always had the like counter draw option, and this has that. It's just its counter spell feature is weirder. It's not a counter spell, but indestructible to all of your creatures and Lightning Helix and or a 3/2 blocker all kind of can be counter spell. But then this is a win condition. What Cryptic Command could never do is draw it and win you the game. This can literally swing in for 4, and it's 3 damage to any target as well. So you can also play the 3/2 at the end of their turn where they have no blockers and 3 them and then swing on your turn for another 3. So like maxing out at 6 damage. Like there's a lot of versatile play on this card. I really like it. It sucks that it's 5 mana, but like I think in standard, staple. I think in historic, playable. I think in modern, spicy splash and Jeskai lists, and I think in commander, staple.
I mean, getting like Jeskai control, snapping this. Like end of turn, let me snap this. I'll put 2 power off my snap, 3 power off of my 3/2, and I will draw 2 cards off of sacking this land that I have on the battlefield, which is going to draw me another Snapcaster or a Lightning Bolt or something else, and I'm going to just win the game.
Even going back to this deck, this Mardu deck that it sounds this deck would also be sweet in, the fact that you cast this and like it triggers the Young Pyromancers to put the make a +1/+1 counter, and then this gives it +1/+0 in haste. Right, so it like layers into itself to be profitable. Quadrix Command, 1 blue-green, instant, choose to return target creature or planeswalker to its owner's hand, counter target artifact or enchantment spell, put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature, or target player shuffles up to 3 target cards from their graveyard into their library.
So I really like that both of the blue 3-drops are instants. That makes me really happy. Because even cards that are underpowered that are modal, I like if they're instants and they're cheap, right? It bothers me a lot less when a card is pushed just less than it should be if it costs 3 versus if it costs 4, right? And I'm even more about it if it costs 2 or 1. But like 3-drop instant is a good solid place to be for a card in blue that I want to have multiple effects on. So I think creature or planeswalker is one part of this that I think is very cool. It could be non-creature permanent, but it's not, right? That's what they're hedging on this. Because it's not disperse or whatever. Well, there's one of those in every set, right?
It can bounce a planeswalker or creature or counter an enchantment or artifact. So it hits the 4 main permanent types one way or the other.
Counter target artifact or enchantment spell makes sense. That's the green component of it.
That's a cool blue-green effect, right? Like it's a counter spell, but it only kills artifacts and enchantments. That's pretty blue-green to me.
Agreed. 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. That's a classic green command. If it costs 1 less, it would only do 1 counter. But that's, we've seen that from before.
And target player always been into that kind of combo. Yeah.
Counters, yeah. And then target player shuffles up to 3 target cards in their graveyard into their library. This one is weirder to me. It's one of the more corner case ones, which I think is probably cool to have. It's just an interesting card that this might be relevant in some metagame at some point. And so getting rid of like a flashback spell from your opponent's graveyard is probably going to be like mostly where this is, or like in response to like a reanimation type of thing.
Yeah, I think that like a decent card that has great sideboard potential with artifact, enchantment, counterspell, and graveyard hate. Like this is another wear tear option, right? Where it's just like it's not the best against all of these things, but it's fine against them. I don't think they're good enough for modern necessarily, because like a 3 mana graveyard hate spell that only hits 3 creatures probably isn't good enough. And a 3 mana counter target artifact enchantment by turn 3 is probably not good enough. What I think is interesting, though, is in like a little bit earlier formats or fresher formats, the Pioneers, Historic, Standards of the world, being able to use this to shuffle your own time walk effects that don't exile themselves back into your graveyard, or like other cards into your graveyard in your like long-term graveyard shenanigan deck, or the fact that 2 of these is a win condition in the same way that old Teferi decks used to be a win condition, or the extra turn card used to be a win condition, right? What's the 1 mana gain 4 life, shuffle your graveyard back into your library?
Elixir of Immortality.
Yeah. Like that's a win condition, right? That is a classic card control win condition where I just am all answers, and my eventual win condition is to mill you out of the game because I can never mill myself out. Playing 4 of these or 2 of these in your deck is that win condition, because you can. Like it has that Teferi mode where you just bounce their thing, you shuffle your 3 best cards, including one of these, into your deck. That guarantees that you'll never mill out, right? I think that's the use case on this card, is it's a win condition for card control decks. Once in a while, you're going to eat their graveyard cards that are problematic with it. You're going to bounce cards that they have, but 90% of the time, the point of this card is to shuffle the second copy back into your deck, plus your 2 best cards, and you're just trying to cycle through your deck so you have just the best cards you want in your deck at all times, and counter and bounce and remove all the spells your opponents have, eventually milling them out from them being unable to do anything, or putting the one Thassa's Oracle back in play.
I think it's possible. It's of the 5, it's my favorite art. It's probably that or Lorehold are the 2 that I like the most.
You don't like the elephant mage with giant scroll laser blasters.
No, that's what I said. It's that or lower hold. Those are my
lower
two.
hold,
Those are the
okay.
two. Yeah,
Actually,
those are like the two best.
I think it was like a great first reveal because I love the art on all of these. I think these all look really good.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool direction for sure.
Actually, me explaining that like reshuffling the Quadrix command back into your deck idea is maybe like has warmed me up to it being really good. I think the only bad one is the black white one now officially.
Yeah,
the fact that like
I agree.
Elixir of Mortality, this is a miserable deck, right? I don't know if it's a good thing this exists, but Elixir of Mortality decks were a real thing. Teferi decks where you would just put him back in your deck so you could never lose the game, and that was your win condition, was a real deck. That's a real standard control deck strategy. This does that. This allows you to play that game where I just will never run out of cards because I have 2 of these in my deck, and eventually I mill myself out to the point where I'm always going to have the best cards in my deck, one of them being this card. And the fact that the other option is a bounce spell is like has the Jace the Mind Sculptor effect, right? I'm always going to be able to remove your threat from being a threat to me while in my end game state am just always going to have valuable cards. Yeah, I'm in. I'm on board.
I think all 5 are pretty sweet. I think Silver Quill's the only weak one, as you said, but I'm just excited to have more commands. So that means that we've now, with these ones, we'll now have the whole cycle of monocolored, the whole cycle of enemy, and the whole cycle of allied. So the only way they would make commands more of a thing would be 3 color commands, right?
Yeah, they could do 3 color. They could do another cycle of 1 color would be the 2 options.
Yeah, I mean, these are sweet. This is a good addition. So there's only 2 other cards that have been previewed that we want to touch on really quickly before we get out of here. And we have 2 Planeswalkers.
Yes.
2 of which, they're both really sweet. I think we can start with Kazmina, which is the blue-green one. It is blue-green 1, 2 loyalty Planeswalker Kazmina. Each other Planeswalker you control has the loyalty abilities of Kazmina Enigma Mage. So it's got the copy thing, kind of like the Nicol Bolas.
I think that's the most relevant ability on this Planeswalker, but continue reading the other abilities.
+2, scry 1, -X, create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token, put X +1/+1 counters on it. So comes down with 2 loyalty. You can minus the X to make a 2/2 essentially, if you want to if you need a 2/2 for 3. And then the ultimate is -8, search your library for an instant or sorcery card that shares a color this Planeswalker. Exile that card, then shuffle. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. So I think the idea, right, is that because each other Planeswalker you control has the loyalty ability of this, you have a big planes, right? That whole idea.
Yeah. So this gives the ability to Planeswalkers like Narset to +2 with the scry, and then -2. Like all of the war Planeswalkers that didn't have a plus now have a plus. Base level. Next level, all of the Planeswalkers that were balanced with only having a +1 now can +2. So you can like play her into any of those walkers that like take 3 turns to ultimate or 2 turns to ultimate, and then they ultimate in 1 turn. Right? They like come in, they +2 scry, and then on the next turn they ultimate. Or you can play a Karn and you can -7 the turn he comes into play and have a 7/7 if you don't want to have a Karn around, or -6 and have a 6/6 and a Karn in play. Or you can get any of the Planeswalkers that can get to 8 loyalty quickly for whatever reason, and then -8 to get any spell you want. The coolest one is this and Teferi, the M21 Teferi, who can get to 8 loyalty very quickly because he can activate all of these abilities on your turn as well, right? Because he can activate any of these abilities on at each opponent's turn. So he can...
Oh, that's super dope.
So he can then, on top of that, -8 at instant speed. So he can do her ultimate at an instant speed. And that's a standard thing for at least 3 months.
Yeah, that's pretty bonkers. That's really, really good. I like this card. I think this card feels in spirit like a lot to do with Nissa, Steward of the Elements, the blue-green Nissa, in terms of cost. It's another 3 mana Simic Planeswalker where the pluses, I think both of their pluses are scry, right? They have the same plus. The minus are both make creatures, I think. Or no. The minus on that one is you put a creature into play from the top of your library, I think. So this one makes creature. That one gets a creature into play. And then both of the ultimates are something that's like pretty powerful. The difference is on Kazmina has this each other Planeswalker thing, which is, I think, pushes it and makes it like a lot more interesting of a card. But I always found that in the color combination at the mana cost, with the scry being the only plus, it was a little awkward for similar reasons that playing Saheeli in any deck that's not a combo deck is always kind of weird.
The 2 differences, the top end, right? Like worst case scenario, you scry, it goes up really quickly, right? A +2 is different than a +1. So it going up to 4 and you get the scry, or you can -1 to create a blocker, right? Like Saheeli doesn't block for herself. This can block at 3 mana is decent. But in a Planeswalker deck, this starts allowing you to do some bonker things, right? Like you can bring in 5 mana Gideon. You can do Bant and like have 5 mana Gideon come in, like +2. He goes up to like 7 loyalty, right? Like he +2's really, really fast for his like fog ability. Then they can't attack her, and then he'll minus on his next turn to make like a big token. Like there's like just cool. It's such a cool static ability that lets you do broken things. And obviously the Teferi one's the coolest thing I could think of by like a wide margin.
I mean, that's really cool. I think there's cool stuff. This card has a very, very, very open-ended idea in my mind of where it's going to end up. I think there's really cool stuff people are going to realize over time. And this is one of those ones that every time they print a new Planeswalker, this card's going to get referenced. It's got a really unique set of statistics on it that I think it being cheap and in blue means that if there is some new Planeswalker printed at some point that just comes down for cheap, like I was trying to think what the highest loyalty War of the Spark uncommon. Did like Kiora? Is that like Kiora have like a 3 mana 7 or 6 or something?
Oh yeah, she comes down 3 mana for like 7 or 8. You're right. And then she doesn't have that's
Right?
nuts. That's really cool. And she's blue-green as well. It's like
That's
she
what I
comes
was
down on
thinking, right?
7 and then -1s to untap a permanent. So you can like
Yeah.
play her, then on your next turn play Kazmina, then have removal spells, and then plus the other one. Yeah, that's really dope, actually. That's another good one. And obviously like the like Narsets of the world, where like Narset you'd like do the impulse thing twice and then it would just sit there and not do anything. This allows you to now plus her, scry, and then on your next turn minus her again, plus her, minus her, plus her, minus her, go back and forth. Sarkon the Mad was another one that someone pointed out that like has
that's a sweet one.
no minus ability. People were joking about original Tybalt. You now don't have to use his loot, random loot effect. You can just like ramp into his threaten effect and the other ability that he has. So like,
yeah, that's pretty sweet. That's pretty interesting.
I think she like works with Planeswalkers in a really interesting way, and it's pretty dope. I'm pretty hyped. The other card that was printed was Professor Onyx, definitely not Liliana. 4 black, black, legendary Planeswalker Liliana. Magecraft, like our preview card. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. +1 is you lose 1 life, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest in your graveyard. -3, each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures that player controls. -8, each opponent may discard a card. If they don't, they lose 3 life. Repeat this process 6 more times. Comes in with 5 loyalty. I will say, I wish that the black-white command had this version of a sacrifice ability. Right? The
greatest power ability. Agreed. This card, when I read it, it's a different card, but it feels like the way that I feel when somebody plays that 6 mana Mythic Liliana from recently. That feels like it. Like when people have played that card against me before, it's always like, oh no. Like if I don't figure something out fast, this is really bad news. Like this is gonna get bad fast. That's what this card feels like to me. It's just this card selection alone. You play this card, and if you can't deal with it right away, you're gonna lose a life to draw the best of your top 3 cards every turn. Like I win.
Well, and you drain them, right? You lose a life, draw the best one of your 3 cards, and then as long as that's not a creature spell, you're going to drain them for 2 and gain 2 life. So it's like, I think actually the Magecraft, and there's a card that I'm waiting for the internet, and maybe Marshall will put it up. I asked Twitter because I forgot. I think it's Chain of Smog is the card that goes infinite with Liliana. Now, this is more of a command. It's a reserve list card, so it's immediately spiked up to like $20 overnight. But it's 1 in a black sorcery. Target player discards 2 cards from his or her hand. That player may copy this spell and may choose a new target for that copy. With Liliana in play, you can target yourself and copy it infinite amount of times. So you can copy this card as many times as you want without dying. Liliana then will kill your opponents and/or opponent.
Chain of Smog can't be. There's no way that's a reserve list card.
Maybe it's not reserve list. It did shoot up to $20. I guess people were complaining about it being just not printed in a long time and the spike that happened. That is true of all Magecraft spells. So our preview card, Leonin Light Scribe, I have to keep looking into my scrolls to remember, also will give infinite +1/+1 bonuses to all your creatures until end of turn with Chain of Smog on the stack, right? Like you can target yourself and go infinite with it. So Liliana just kills people. And that's like a thing you can do in Commander. I think that's a cool Magecraft thing in general, right? Like there's going to be other cards that are printed that do well with Chain of Smog.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's one of the weird things of like an antiquated ability that they haven't printed in a very, very long time. That Chain of Smog is part of a cycle. Chain of Vapor, Chain of Smog, Chain of Plasma, I think.
Yeah, there's
I
one of
can't
each
remember
color.
what the five of them are. I think they're all from Onslaught, but that's obviously from a long time ago. I mean, Onslaught's from like 2001 or something. So now 20 years later, we're getting something that is a little bit busted with something from 20 years ago. Unsurprising. I can't like fault them really for that.
Yeah, and no, I don't fault them at all. I think it's like cool, right? Like especially with Professor Onyx, it's a 6 mana card that kills everyone at the table. That's like fine. That's 10 mana, you win. There are much stronger ways of accomplishing that. What's cool about it though is if we see it with other cards. If there are other win conditions that are printed with it, it becomes a little bit more legacy. Like if they print a Hedging Crab that has Magecraft, basically, right? That's a legacy playable combo.
Yeah,
If you have like one blue Chain of Smog, I win. Even if it's 2 mana, right? Like anything that will be able to kill your opponent that quickly is like Legacy, Vintage, Commander, CDH playable. So that'll be
as long as
be
they cost one. As long as they cost one or two, right?
Or they're blue and cost 3. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, if they're blue, that's the difference because you can pitch.
I can't imagine there's not like a 2 mana Magecraft do a thing that kills your opponent.
Right, like it's like Magecraft 1 damage kind of a deal.
Yeah, or like Magecraft 1 damage or Magecraft. I think that'll be a 3-drop. I think we'll see a Magecraft like do 1 damage to each opponent or something like that.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, so we'll see. It'll be interesting. And then the -8 is each opponent may discard a card. If they don't, they lose 3 life. Repeat this process 6 or more times, which is like you choose.
Torment of Hellfire, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's for 6. So that's cool. Yeah. I'm hyped that Liliana just is like retiring from More of the Spark and has become a professor. As long as, if you can't teach. And if you can't teach PE, which is where I'm hoping Garrick is in this set. So that's the other thing we know, and we don't know yet where they show up. But we know that the twins, Will and Rowan, are in this set. They're like the face of the set. My guess is that they'll be a modal dual face card. One will be Will, and the other side will be Kenrith. We do know that Morrow said that one of the double face cards is going to be a permanent combination we haven't gotten, which means it can't be a creature on one half, and it can't be a land on one half, because we've gotten all the different land and something we've gotten. And we've gotten all of creature and something. So it's going to be artifact, or artifact enchantment, or planeswalker, right, or whatever. And it feels like Will and Rowan are like the perfect card for that.
Will and Rowan are the Royal Scions. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
They were like in Battle Bond. They first showed up in Battle Bond, and they had partner with each other.
I remember the Battle Bond cards, and then I figured they were the Royal Scions. I just wanted to make sense.
Plot wise, they share a spark, so they've always shown up together. But every single time it's gone differently. The first time it was they were partnered with. The second time it was they're just 2 characters on a card, which was I think the first time we've ever gotten that. And then this, I'm guessing that they're a modal dual face card in this one. So you get to choose which one you play. And then the other cool thing about this is Garrick. We don't know if Garrick is showing up, but Garrick has been teaching Will and Rowan. Like he's been looking after, like the end of the story and this is why story is important, Ben, because you can predict the future. The end of Eldraine was that Garrick kind of left with Will and Rowan to teach them and to watch over them as they like traverse the universe. It's kind of like the Chewbacca to Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker-esque adventures. Garrick hates Liliana because she turned him evil for an extended period of time where he murdered a bunch of people. And in general, they don't get along. Liliana is now also teaching Will and Rowan something. Does Garrick show up? Does he not show up? We're going to find out. But that's the other piece of kind of like interesting continuation of story of the world, is that this could be like a Liliana versus Garrick set, which haven't gotten since Innistrad. So that's dope. I'm into that as well.
Wasn't that one questionable piece of art on a card, Triumph of Ferocity? That was them, right? That was Garrick against Liliana?
Correct.
Yeah.
That was like more like Garrick was being violent towards Liliana in a way that was maybe a little too. But yeah, so those are all the cards we've gotten today. Obviously, we're now seeing previews as we speak. We'll see what that looks like. Make sure to like and subscribe, everyone, and check out all of the content that we release. We're really hyped. Thank you again, Wizards, for the preview card. That was really, really, really cool. I hope that me putting into a scroll form and shooting with my elephant buddies, people with it was fun for everyone. And I'm really happy with this. Well, yeah, I guess so far with what you've seen, where are you on hype for Strixhaven?
Pretty hype. I think it seems really fun. I like the design a lot. I think it's I prefer the idea that you have like a School of Mages Harry Potter type of thing without it just being the Harry Potter license. I think it's cooler, and it makes me happier to see them creating their own IP. So it's cool. I mean, there are a lot of I watched all those Harry Potter movies a couple times now, and there's a lot of stuff in those movies that's great. There's some stuff I don't like as much, but there's a lot of stuff I really do like. Right. And I think a lot of the stuff that I do like is stuff that I can see is going to be incorporated into the design. I like those commands are great. There's a reason they released those first. You can sort of tell what's going on. I think that's really badass.
I think that like a couple things. I think as a person who is a big Harry Potter fan, who over the last couple of years has learned that the person behind it has things they don't love as far as belief systems they don't want to pretty much support, which makes Harry Potter kind of not a thing I like enjoying it as much anymore. This gives me an outlet, which is great because I love a lot of the concepts of that, right? I like magic school. I like tribalism that doesn't matter. And like, I'm really hyped that one of my favorite things in the world, Magic, is getting its own version of that I can kind of latch onto and jump fully into. I also like seeing color combo groups or tribes or whatever factions that aren't just Ravnica.
Yeah.
If you don't vibe with like Boros is a great example, right? Like Boros, if you're not into the military or the cops, Boros doesn't have a lot to offer you. But like if you're a red-white player, you might like things about that color combo that just Boros doesn't speak to. Lorehold is this is Indiana Jones Adventures. I did a whole Twitter thread on like the best Lorehold characters in social media, right? And that was like a really fun, like this is a totally different vibe from that. Same as like Prismari, right? If you're not a big scientist, but you're more of an artist, blue-red still falls within that framework. If you're not into biology or weird mad scientist stuff, but you like math, Quadrix is another option. Witherbloom and Golgari are basically the same thing. If you're green-black, you like graveyards. And then Silver Quill just has like less of the bad vibes, I guess. But like, writing versus wealth, like there is definitely a different vibe there. So I don't know. I appreciate, I've like really liked what we're getting. Modal dual face cards are also just like one of the coolest things Wizards has done in a long time. I've liked how pretty much they've come out. So yeah, I'm pretty hyped.
Agreed.
I'm excited to see more cards, and I'm excited to see what you guys think. Let us know what you think below. Please like and subscribe. Make sure to check out our Monday night Commander stream. We do a bunch of Commander content. Probably not next week, but in a couple weeks, we'll be doing like Strixhaven-based Commander games where each of us will take on a Strixhaven Commander, but that'll be in a few weeks. In the meantime, we'll just have our normal Commander stuff. And thanks again to Wizards for the awesome preview card.
Thanks, guys. We very much appreciate it. Appreciate you guys watching as well.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.